Welcome back to Sid Nickel Publications. The title of today's video is The 5 Things I Learned About Me When I Wrote My First Book. And this message, as all the messages from my videos, are aimed at indie writers. Those of us who are out there trying to write and self-publish probably our first book, maybe a small number of books as we get our careers in writing going. There are 5 things, but I want to begin with the most important thing. The most important thing is when I started writing this book, I asked myself some very hard questions. As I wrote it, I began to understand that I needed to explain who I was. That was the gist of the story, a backwards glance. It was talking about my life and reflections back on how I grew up and who I grew up with, the people, the events, the places. That was the story. That was my plot. As I wrote this book, it became really clear to me that I needed to understand myself as I wrote that story. What happened was a lot of questions came up. Why do I not feel successful, even though my life to most everyone was and looked successful? Why was I not happy when most everyone looked at me and thought I must be incredibly happy? Why? Great family, great children, wonderful health, successful career, happy marriage. All these things were going along with me as I was writing this book. But inside of me were some storms that had been brewing forever. I've always been a person of low self-esteem, had a feeling of being inferior since I was a kid. Not because of any 1 or 2 events. I certainly didn't have any major childhood trauma. I had a tough upbringing. We were very poor, and my father was kind of a tough guy, but I understood all those things. There's nothing very special or very isolating about that. Most people have those things in their lives. For some reason, I began the habit of thinking I wasn't as good as other people. I wasn't measuring up to other people. Now, the only positive from that is that made me really drive myself to overcome that, to win in one-on-one situations, especially in sports, to win at work, to be outwardly as good as I could be of a manager, to be a good friend, and try my best to be a good father, a good husband, all those things. My own inner feelings of inferiority drove me to project these other things. When I wrote this book, it laid me open. It made me write words about what my feelings were. And as I developed the book and asked those questions, I had to answer them. As the book progressed, I had to answer some of the questions like, when I was younger, why did I not feel as good about sports as I should have? Why did I take all this great extra harm from failures at certain things? Why did I not really enjoy the successes of my career? I had to answer those things. In writing this book, I examined who I was. I asked those hard questions, and it took a lot of soul bearing to get to the point of I was creating an awful lot of harm for myself internally. I wasn't getting it from anywhere else. And it was almost like a slap in the face to just wake up and say, oh no, it's been me all along. There's no great force in the universe who is identifying me as this inferior person I just can never measure up. That was what I was creating. Nobody else really cared. I mean, people liked me, I think. They thought I was a pretty good guy. But as far as the emotional judgments of me, not much else beyond, how are you? It's good to see you. How are things going? I created great harm to myself in my own evaluation of how I measured up. And this book and the writing process helped me to break through that and put it aside. So writing for me has changed my entire view of myself, my entire perspective on who I am. That was the major breakthrough I had in writing my first book. I don't know if you're going to have that when you write your first book. I don't know if you're going to learn that kind of lesson, but more than likely you will learn something about who you are, because it's going to require a tremendous amount of work, discipline, stick-to-itiveness. I mean, you're going to have to stick in there. You're going to have to go through a lot of challenges. And we're going to talk more about some things I learned, but I want to get that very key thing out here first. I learned about me when I wrote my first book. And when I finished it, I liked me a lot better than I did when I went into that book. And that's a gift. The next thing, point number 2 that I learned when I wrote my first book, I learned that I not only have the desire, but I have the talent to write a book. And that was very, very important to me. It was a project I had thought about forever, seems like, for years. I had wanted to do it, had thought about it. And I think I had told everyone this story. This book began as that book, Principles, story of a company I worked for in Chicago. That's how I began writing. And it turned into a backwards glance, a collection of stories, because there was more depth, there was more things. And those things were really important for me to speak about and to get out there. And I learned that I had the energy and, like I said, the desire to put this book together and make it happen. Now, the third thing I will tell you is I also learned that I can tell, but I can also write a great story, a story that is compelling, a story that creates curiosity, a story that makes people want to read more and get deeper into the story. And I'll tell you how I know that. Because when I talk to people about this book, they're not just talking about the first couple of stories, the first couple of chapters. They're talking about stories deep in the book, in the middle of the book, all over the book. And I get those questions and I get those conversations all the time. And what it says to me is I wrote a good story that people wanted to read and they wanted to really absorb the whole thing. And that's also, as a writer, a very positive and good thing. The fourth thing I learned from writing this book is this. I can manage the absolute discipline it takes to put a book together. Not only just to write it, but to now assemble it properly. And when I say assemble, I mean edit, rewrite, and do that over and over 100 times. Fix sentences, paragraphs, pages, and chapters. Make them better. Revise what you've written. Sometimes you hear this phrase, the quality writing is in the revision. I think some very famous writer said that, and it kind of stuck in our business. And it's very true. Great writing comes from that multiple revision of your work, because if you focus on it and you work hard at it, it'll get better. But you've got to have the discipline to rewrite and edit and revise so many times to get it right. And you have to do that so you can say at the end of your book, you can have 100% confidence to tell people it's a great book, it's well written, and it's of value to them, and they should buy it. That's an important part of writing discipline. And you have to have that to be able to tell about your book and be able to say to people, you should buy my book. That's really, really important. Now, the last thing, the fifth thing I will tell you I discovered when I wrote this book is I discovered that I am as capable as anyone I know to write a book, to tell a story. And let me tell you why I think that. I enjoyed book one. It was a collection of stories. It wasn't a memoir, but it was about me. So it has a modified, maybe, memoir. The next book I wrote, Who Killed Glenna, right over here, was a crime fiction story. It's a story that had just been rattling around in my brain, and I was able to sit down and write that story, and write it, I think, fairly well. It's my next most successful book. I loved that story. I loved writing. I loved including people that I had grown up with as fictional characters, changing them enough to not put that exact person in the book, but most, let's say the essence of those people in the book, places that I knew and had grown up in and been around. The next book I wrote was the Principles book. I got to that story about my company that I loved. I got that written. So there was this stories collection book. There was a crime fiction. Then there was a book about business. So all of a sudden I'm feeling like I can write in these different areas and I can make sense, and my writing is getting better. Then I decided to write, if I could turn back time, another story. It was really a story of fantasy almost. It's like a strange thing, a travel through time thought came to my main character. Not really science fiction, but just a little bit of fantasy and a little bit of strange occurrence. Then the last book I wrote, Kill 'Em All, was the second in the Sam Bennett series. It's a companion book to Who Killed Glenna. So now I have gone from writing one book that opened up all this information for me as a person, gave me a lot more confidence. I don't know if it's great confidence, but a lot more confidence in myself and my ability. And I started writing across all these other subjects. I feel very good about the work I've done. Even my own editor, who really has the ability to tear my work apart, has said to me on the last couple of occasions we worked together that my writing is getting much better, and that Kill 'Em All was my best work ever. So you see the growth there. You see the progress. That's what I think writing has done for me personally. It has opened up a door that I had kept closed. I just didn't want to talk about for a long time. It helped me find ways to learn, ways to change what I thought about a certain topic, like writing, or like crime, or like some sort of fantasy story, or a business story. It pressed me, it stretched me, and tested me to do those things. And then I realized I had to do all these things consistently. And I had to spend money. I had to find professional editing, which I did, and I had to find professional covers. After a couple of failures, I certainly was able to do that. And we all learn as we go. The other thing is you've got to spend that money on the editing and on the cover, or you're just putting junk on your work. I would say don't do that. I would say take those next steps. Put your book in that giant 5 to 7 million book pool on Amazon with its best foot forward. And then do what I'm trying to do now. Learn about reviews. Learn as much as you can more about marketing. Learn more about how to present yourself so that you are less of an unknown and less invisible in the indie writing world. Because that's what we all need. We need to be less invisible. I hope today's video reaches you somehow. I hope it matters, because it was a heartfelt story about the benefits I've gotten from being an indie author. We'll come back and we'll talk more about these kind of subjects that are important to indie writers sometime next week. But until we get back together, I hope you have a great week. Please go out, have some fun with your family and your friends. It's so important, and you'll love doing it. But take care of yourself. We will see you again soon. Bye-bye.